doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.
And Peter, yeah, I always remember how simple you made it when I asked you, how did you get the 6 Danish pension funds to invest $1 billion into a transport fund for Africa? And you said something about, I took my trustees on a plane, or they got on a plane and went to Africa. You've got to see the market. I mean, you're going to put consultancies and consultants out of work with that simplicity. But anyway, love to hear your views on the same subject.
Yes, one of my views when I was CEO at PKA was never use a consultant.
Oh.
I know things are different in many other places of the world, but I made study trips with my boards, and that convinced them in many cases much more than a lot of reports from consultants. Now, coming back to the issue. I'm here representing a group of investors together with the Nordic governments that have worked to make commitments towards 2050. And last year in Glasgow, the commitment was to invest $130 billion in the green area. The specific thing about this initiative is that this is for the short term to 2030, and we also have the reporting from the investors on how much they actually have invested. And tomorrow we are going to announce, at least for the Danish investors, where we have the precise numbers, but we have also heard from some of the other investors. And the good story is actually that they have invested so that if they keep on investing like that, they will reach the 130 billion, and I think they will even invest more in 2030. So we are on track. Of course, the turbulence we have seen in the financial market have done that it's not a direct line. We will have to make some curves, but I'm quite sure we'll be there. If we look at the emerging markets, we don't have the precise numbers, but it seems like they have also continued investing in emerging markets. The problem is they have not invested enough, and so they have to bring up the number that's actually invested in the emerging market. And if I look at the emerging markets, Africa is one of the places where they have invested least. So we still have the problem, and we still have to work with it. I think what we have heard from the other speakers, I won't take up the same thing. I agree. But to be practical, and that's built upon that the organization where I used to work, PKA, and the contacts I still have, is based upon investments in the last 5 or 6 years in the emerging markets. So we both have good cases and we have bad cases. And then what I think especially the MDBs could do was to have a better dialogue with the investors. I know many investors have dialogues with their governments, but we need more dialogues with investors and between investors and MDBs. But also the investors have to come forward and take and bring that dialogue together, because one of the things, and here I start with the investor side, is if you really want to go into emerging market and green deals, you have to get the competences on board, or you have to buy it. And too many pension funds are not there yet. Some of the large ones and some of the big ones have done it, but the other ones have to do it. Then I think actually there's also in some cases a crowd out and not a crowd in. If we take all the good projects, then actually you could in some cases say, why should the development banks be there if not for crowding in private capital? They should take the more risky projects and then crowd in capital in the less risky projects. So we have to develop some kind of working relation between private investors and development banks on who is working where. And the other thing I would mention was actually I think we need both blended capital instruments, and we need guarantees. But we should also be aware that we could have too many, that each country and each development bank develops his or her kind of institute, a way of doing it. It becomes too complicated if you're a small investor, but also for large investors. So working together, get fewer programs or get fewer ways of doing it is where we are today, because we have tried, we have had successes, but not enough.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.